Thank you for joining us today for the first webinar of our Spring 2025 Living Well Wednesday series. I am Monique Kerner, Family and Community Wellness Agent, Cottonwood District, and I will be your host today. This virtual series is focused on a wide variety of essential skills that empower you and your family. During this presentation, please be respectful and open to others throughout the presentation. Feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box or into the chat. The Q&A has an anonymous feature, so feel free to utilize this if you wish. Our chat monitors will watch closely to make sure your questions are answered. Today's presentation will be posted to our Living Well Wednesday homepage. We encourage you to visit this to see past webinars we've presented. Next slide. K-State Research and Extension is an equal opportunity employer. Therefore, we do not discriminate against anyone. If there is a special request or concern to allow you to participate in our programs, please reach out to us. We're so excited to welcome Elizabeth Kish. She is a Kansas State University Department of Personal Finance Planning Professor and Extension Specialist. The topic of her presentation is 52 Ways to Climate-Proof Your Finances. Thanks for joining us, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Monique. Hi, everybody. I am Elizabeth Kish, and I am in the Department of Personal Financial Planning. I work as an extension specialist for Kansas State University, and I'm really excited to be here today. This topic is near and dear to my heart, and is something that's we've been working on for quite a while. It does represent the thinking and scholarship of 10 colleagues, colleagues from 10 institutions around the country. And I have a list of contributors at the end of the presentation. But we couldn't be in Kansas on a day like today without having the weather report. So if everybody feels comfortable, if you feel comfortable, please put in the chat how many inches of snow you've gotten, where you're at. Anybody going to be brave? Okay. Oh, somebody's in Texas, so 0. Okay. Yeah. Um, yeah. So for those of us in Kansas, you may know that K-State is on limited operations today. So many of us are working from our homes and didn't go into the office today. So thanks for that. Just an example of climate in today's world. So our objectives for today are to really talk about how climate and potentially climate change can affect our personal finances. I'm not sure if, we don't always think about how these things might be related. We'll also have an opportunity to identify some action steps for you as individuals to climate-proof your financial affairs, and also then to create a personal action plan that outlines action steps, encourages how you might prioritize those steps, and then documents how you can actually complete them. And that's going to be the bulk of what we'll talk about today. So what do we know about climate and or climate change? And maybe you talk about changing weather or climate change, or we say weather patterns are changing, or we just talk about climate, because even if we don't think that there's a long-term change, we certainly know that there are things happening with climate that are impacting us. So that's what we need to think about. And we know that there are increased frequency and severity of weather events. Sea levels are rising, and currently we are experiencing a time of higher temperatures in the United States and around the world. So the 5th National Climate Assessment reports an increase, again, in the severity, extent, and frequency of multiple types of extreme events. Some of those could be heat waves, droughts, large rainfall events that cause flood risks, hurricanes, and wildfires. Sometimes we also include blizzards in that, and thunderstorms too, right? Summer storms. And American families are increasingly vulnerable to climate-related risks, and then that can have a cascading effect on household finances. So interestingly, the US Department of Treasury has been doing some research and has encouraged families to enhance their financial well-being or resilience in order um, to be able to respond to whatever climate might throw at us and take action. So if you think about it, and this is an opportunity for some interaction, again, in the chat, what types of climate related events have occurred in your community? And you can think back the last year, 6 months, whatever makes, whatever your time horizon is. So what types of events have occurred in your community? Tornadoes, yes. What else? Drought. Well, Donna's got the whole list. Blizzard, high winds, fires, drought. Yeah. High windstorms. Exactly. So how could or might have these climate events affected you, either your personal financial situation or the financial situations of those in your community? Thoughts on that? So I won't leave you hanging. Department of Treasury, oh yes, rebuilding costs are definitely one of them, has identified damage and destruction to property, and then having to rebuild as definitely one of the costs. We might not think about it, but when there are climate related events, if businesses close, then some people actually don't work and they then don't get paid. And if they don't get paid, they might not have access to all their employee benefits that they otherwise would be eligible for. So it can reduce earnings. There, again, the damage and destruction to property. It can increase spending on transportation, and that depends on what your major mode or modes of transportation are. But for many of us in the Midwest, that tends to be driving. And if things are disrupted enough by a climate event, a storm, um, then the price of gasoline might go up. And so then buying fuel for vehicles could increase. Also, there could be added healthcare costs if someone is injured in a physically injured or has some um, other challenges, anxiety perhaps, or something like that. There could be increased medical costs, and or in a wildfire situation, there could be respiratory effects, so that could have medical costs as well. Then also higher utility costs. If you think about it, like tonight, tomorrow, going to get really cold, right? So many of us will likely experience a blip in our energy use, and that will cause a spike in our bill either next month or the one after, depending what your utility payment period is. So also other challenges that could be caused by climate include challenges accessing our funds. So if you think about it, if the power goes out, we can't use an ATM. We may not be able, even if we can get to a retailer or a gas station or whatever, we may not be able to use credit card. It's some kind of card, right? Because the payment systems will be down, and you might be able to pay with cash, but sometimes if the retailer is not able to open their drawer, then you still can't even pay with cash, right? There could be insurance gaps. And I know if you've been following the wildfires in California, some insurance companies have decided or they did announce that they were going to pull out of coverage in California. They may be coming back. I'm not sure, who's covering what these days, but For sure, they may limit what they cover, and definitely the costs may be more expensive. And then finally, the Treasury identifies that climate events could cause credit to availability to be reduced, and or the cost of credit could increase. And so when we talk about the cost of credit, we're referring to the interest rate that we as consumers, borrowers, pay to access credit from a lender. So, and I don't, Monique, are you able to put that link to the fact sheet in the, thank you, Sherilyn. So if you would like to read more, this is a fact sheet, a shorter version of a fuller report. And if there's a link to the full report, and also the reference for the full report is in the reference list at the end of this presentation. So now let's talk about this tool that our group has developed. And if you could go, you can access it two ways. If you could use the QR code is one way to do it. And then also there's a link that Sherilyn just put into the chat. So you could click on that and it will take you to a page on the Extension Disaster Education Network website, and then just need to scroll down a little bit and click on where it says access the tool. So I'm going to wait maybe a little bit for you all for that to happen. If you're having any challenges, please either use the Q&A or the chat to let us know that, because this will be a focus of what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time together today. So again, this tool has been developed by personal finance experts from around the country who work within the United States Cooperative Extension System. And the tool includes 52 ways that you can use to climate proof your personal finances. And so, as I said, we're going to spend our time going through this tool and talking about the sections and the tasks outlined for completion. We recognize that it's not exhaustive. We could have made it, 104 ways or something to climate proof your finances, but we do feel it's an excellent guide and a resource when it comes to these activities. So it's important to realize, though, when you see this, that we have no expectation that someone might complete all these tasks at one time. Some of the tasks are for one-time events. Some of them are more recurring. Some of them are also seasonal. So the idea is to review the tool and look at the tasks and see which ones relate most to your life and what makes sense for you to be able to accomplish. So we view this tool as a way to spark your thinking and to get you started on climate proofing your finances. And then when you're ready to act, you can use the middle column to identify which actions you're going to work on and what time of year you will complete the task to track your progress. And then once you've started a habit or completed a task, you can put a check mark next to it with the date. But again, these are not all sort of one and done. Some of them are recurring, and we might do them seasonally or once a year. So because of our brief time together, we definitely won't go through each action step in the toolkit. And I would like to ask again, is there anyone who wasn't able to download the toolkit? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone saying that. So we had, I wasn't making the connection between the differences between Zoom webinar and Zoom meetings. So we are not able to put you into groups. If you happen to be viewing this with someone else, feel free to work in a group. What I will ask you to do is to take a look at the tool and identify two, we say favorite, I think two actions that seem doable. And then I will ask you we'll have some conversation about that. Okay, so I'm going to give you, and I know this may be a bit um, different on a webinar, but I am going to give you some time. I'm going to give you about 4 to 5 minutes to get your bearing in the toolkit and to identify those actions that you are intrigued by and that you would like to work on. So I will go ahead and do that, and we'll come back together at 12:30 by my clock. So I'm going to mute my audio and have at it. Take a look at the tool and again, identify a couple actions that you're interested in working on. And you can take it from any of the topics that you'd like to. Just about another minute, and then we'll all come back together. So this is the interactive part of the workshop, the presentation. Do I have a volunteer for someone who might have looked at the personal finance section and picked out one activity that they would like to try or one action? And it looks like you will be able to be unmuted and speak if that's easier than typing in the chat. And when you, well, I might get us started. So one of my favorite, or I don't know if it's a favorite activity, but something I'm often working on is to create an emergency fund. And it really, the recommendation from personal finance experts is to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses available. And so it can take a while to achieve that amount of money because we often don't have that much sort of money left at the end of the month, right? We have more month than money, as the song goes. But that's something that I work on over time. And actually, over time, it can add up. So, and what we also think about is even if you don't have 3 to 6 months of emergency savings available, anything that you have means that you're less likely to need to use a credit card or other sort of credit obligation. So that's mine. And I picked it because I think it could have a big impact. It's not necessarily that it costs less. Um, and I have an account and I just put $40 a month in it. And so that's my emergency fund. Okay, so I see a question from Ashley. Make digital copies and where do you store these? Yeah, that's a really good question. I think and I'm wondering if you mean the paranoid on two levels. If you're concerned about actually losing or having the digital copies corrupted, just technology wise, but then also, or not being able to access because maybe with technology innovation, just like who's got a little floppy disk anymore, right? So those are really good questions. I think, but it could also be, you're worried if you save something online and then it gets hacked. And I think both of those are really important considerations. Um, but I think an external drive is one way to do it, and um, do it regularly and maybe have more than one external drive or flash drive and keep those safe and then update once a year or on some regular schedule. But cloud storage is also an option, and they market that it will be safe. So I think we all just have to find our individual comfort levels with cloud storage and our personal records. You can also, though, take actual pictures, make actual copies, have a safe deposit box at a financial institution and keep paper records there too. And I know you mentioned digital, but digital in some ways, yeah, that's not the same as paper, but paper might also be a way to go. Um, Wadana shares that her group felt a household inventory, and that is, and also Anita. So that is personal finances. Thank you for sharing. How about insurance? Anybody see anything in insurance that they weren't familiar with or gave them an aha moment? For example, the 1 second from the bottom on that page talks about check your insurance policy to see if coverages exist for spoiled food in an emergency. I know a lot of people in the Midwest keep their freezers full, right? And so that can be an expensive loss. And so check your insurance policy to see if you already have that coverage. And if you don't, you might consider how much would it add to your annual premium, and what is your deductible? I think you also have to figure that out. Because if the loss is less than your deductible, then you probably wouldn't make a claim. But if the loss is larger than your deductible, you might make a claim. Anybody have anything that they really noticed on the insurance category? Okay, well, let's move on to clothing, shoes, and laundry. How many of you air dry? Maybe we'll just, we don't have reactions, I guess. Do you air dry your clothes? That's something that I've been doing um, for quite some time, and you have to plan ahead, and it's not for all types of items of clothing or household furnishings, but it can be um, it can be something you'll do. Okay, so Marcia's talking mentions about the flooding near Asheville, North Carolina. That was, I believe, last fall. And that the insurance is up to date, yes, and what it covers. So we do recommend an annual insurance review, and to make sure that, especially for your home and possessions, that the value is um, accurately insured, right? Because homes are getting more expensive to rebuild. So you want to make sure that the values that you're insuring things for will actually be useful if you would need to replace items. And the other item in terms of clothes, shoes, and laundry, and I think in this day and age, a lot of us are aware of this, but if we buy only what's needed and consider shopping at thrift stores, garage sales, and vintage stores, there's some people who are just expert at that and they find such good things. And so they can actually spend less, and they are not contributing to the huge amounts of clothing waste that actually we're generating. So let's move on to food. And um, what do you see about food? Any actions there? How many of you compost already? I compost is something that I just love it. It's so fun. You take your scraps and you wait and stir it up, and then you get this wonderful smelling and useful um material that comes out of it. Okay, somebody just started composting in December, and it in December it might take a while. You need a hot summer, but yeah, I just composting is a wonderful thing, and it's just a really cool chemical reaction too. All right, housing. I think we often think about housing and the things that we can do. So I'm hoping that many of you thought of some housing things. I will say that when it comes to some of if there were rebates mentioned, um, or I guess there is the section on tax credits. So the rebates tend to come from the manufacturers, and so those still may be available. And sometimes and you might be able to get a tax credit. So for example, I replaced some windows in a home, and we were able to get a tax credit on our federal taxes. Um, so that's something you can do. I think, sometimes we think about replacing, and that can be really expensive. So these things are things we might need to save for, and plan ahead for. But then there could be some other things that are perhaps um, less expensive. Like there is one that we talk about, do your research, and one action, and it is an action. It might be viewed as an extreme action, to be resilient to climate is to move. And we know that a lot of people, for various reasons, I mean, either the water situation or the fire situation, move from California to other parts of the country. So, it's not for everyone, and not everyone has that option, but or it doesn't have to be so extreme, move across country, but maybe even within the state where you're living, there could be opportunities to move. Um, Understand your flood risk. So this one is you check the FEMA maps and you see. So particularly, we think about those maybe on the eastern side of the state, on the Missouri River, but many rivers flood and streams. So it's not just the big rivers. So in terms of that, so anybody have any housing actions that they think they might take. And we do offer a few suggestions or one suggestion specifically for renters. If people happen to be a renter, there are possibly tax credits as well. New windows. Okay, yeah. And again, new windows are pricey, but depending may not be as expensive as you think. And if you just do it systematically, maybe one or two every year, soon you'll have them all done. So the next topic area is tax credits. And actually, and you'll notice that some of this, we created this fact sheet. We just published it last fall. I think much of it is still current, although I think as with any government policies, they're always subject to change. So you would need to always check out the current policy on what tax credits might be available and rebates and those kind of things. In terms of transportation actions, I think one of the biggest ones is to just simply review the driving tips for improving gas mileage. And I think many of us know this, but drive the speed limit over a certain, like if you're going over 45, you should close your windows, but maybe not use the air conditioning under 45. And a lot of this is personal preference and your vehicle, but I would challenge everyone to think about how you might get just a few more miles out of a tank of gas because that'll save you money. Preparedness is another big one, and there's lots of resources about making a plan and what you need, grab and go bags. We have a great fact sheet from K-State Research and Extension about getting financially prepared that talks about, actually includes several of the actions that we have here as well. The household inventory, keeping records of have the backup of your financial records, an emergency fund, grab and go bags. Then and a really easy thing to do in terms of preparedness would be to subscribe to an emergency alert service. So, how many of you get the FEMA alerts? They've been pretty active the last couple of days with this winter storm or winter weather advisory coming in. And the Red Cross also has an app. Anybody else have an app that for emergency alerts? And it could be maybe your county has one. Employers, we have K-State Alerts, WIBW weather app. I find they have, yeah. I'm sure there are other great weather stations in Kansas or other great stations in Kansas, but I do watch WIBW and FEMA. Good. So, yep, I think getting alerts is an easy one. And especially again, because in Kansas, we tend to drive distances, right? So I think even within Kansas, there was a variety or a variation among the level of snow that fell or has fallen or may continue to fall in these last 2 days. And so you drive from one place to the other, and you need to be aware if you're driving towards something that you might need to take action to protect yourself. I think of that especially in the spring, actually summer and fall, when like with tornadoes or thunderstorms might happen. And then the last one is if the last sort of category is becoming a professional. And if this is a topic area that you find very interesting and it excites you, then you might consider getting the skills and credentials that could lead to employment. And again, this could be as a financial professional, it could be someone who works in emergency management. It could be someone who supports communities as they try to become more resilient. Lots of different ways to do it. Elizabeth, you mentioned you have the FEMA app. Okay, good. So Yeah, and search FEMA. You might be able to get it off there or find a link on the website too, but I'm I'm not 100% certain about that today. The very last thing, as you work through this, but every time you actually even think about something, you plan to take action, you actually take action, you complete an action, celebrate because you, regardless of where you are in that continuum or on that continuum, you are succeeding in getting more financially resilient um, to climate. So, any other actions that somebody would like to mention that they would like to try, or maybe, we tried to be comprehensive, but again, we did have to leave some out. So, any actions that anyone who's here today feels are um, really important and you'd like to share? Maybe you've successfully done them. If you think of something, I encourage you to put it in the chat. Okay, so moving forward then, what can you do? So again, keep reviewing the 52 ways to climate proof your finances at home. Discuss the action steps with others, and then identify action steps that you're going to adopt or take, and then of course, celebrate. So if you could, this is, again, you could take a picture of the QR code, and then there is also a link that I believe will be in the, um, yep, the link is in the chat. Sherilyn posted the link in the chat. So if you could complete this, and I will just say, this evaluation is part of our national project. So if you could please indicate what state you're coming from. And then this is we actually have two presentations. One is 30 minutes long and one is 60 minutes long, and this is the 30-minute one if you could do that. And then definitely the results will be shared with the organizers of the Living Well Wednesday as well. So they can also know what what you had to say. So I'll give you a minute to work on that. And as you do that, here's the list of contribute. Oh, here's some references. So, these slides, well, these references are in the tool, so you can access them there. And again, it's the Treasury Department, their report, and then this fifth National Climate Assessment, and then some additional resources. And they are also mentioned in the tool on page 3. And I really, if the Climate Action Handbook is, I think it's 100 actions, and some of them are really simple, some of them take a little bit more time. We don't overlap um, so much with that. In fact, probably not too much at all. So I definitely encourage you to check that one out. And then there is this book, Climate Proof Your Finances, your personal finances, which I actually found after we already had our title. So, and again, the impact of the Treasury report. So here's the list of contributors and the states where we all come from, and we're calling this a cooperative extension work group. And this is a peer-reviewed tool, as well as the lesson. All the materials were peer reviewed, and we appreciate our peer reviewers. And then here, this is the same QR code, just in case you didn't get it earlier. And I think if it's okay, I will stop sharing and we can open it up for questions, comments.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Mhm.
Very great presentation. I think you did a great job answering questions as we went along that were in the chat. And I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A, but if anybody wants to come off mute or type anything in the chat. Any other questions?
I'm pleased to present this. I would ask, just as a favor to me, because I won't see the evaluations for a while, right? So in the chat, if everybody could type two things, one thing you learned and one thing you're thinking about doing. I'm not even asking you to commit to doing it, but just one thing you learned and one thing you're thinking about doing. I would appreciate that. Because I know it's hard, it's heavy stuff. So, or it can be. That's why you have to celebrate the small wins and what we do. Thank you, Melinda. Regularly updating household inventory. Yep. And that can be a big job, actually, but definitely worth it. Okay. And Marcia, getting more preparedness things, emergency fund from Elizabeth, review insurance just if needed from Sherilyn. Great. I will, if you have any question, oh, great. About insurance if it covers spoiled food. Yes. Weatherproofing. Proofing. Oh, great. Anita is thinking about making sure to add monthly to a preparedness account. I like that. So we maybe don't call it emergency fund. We call it a preparedness fund or a financial resilience fund. It's more perhaps appealing. I'll put my email in the chat. And if anybody wants to reach out to me or has questions, it's also on one of the slides with I think the cover slide for the program. So
All right, well, I want to thank all of you for attending and Elizabeth for presenting. Your opinions are valuable to us, and we would like for you to let us know what you thought about today's program. So please complete the survey and share other topics you would like for us to cover. Stay tuned for our next webinar on March 12th. The presentation will be Pinching Pennies in the Kitchen. I'm sure that will be very popular right now. Be sure to check out our Living Well Wednesday website to view all past webinars. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.